This is The Competitive Edge with Rameet Chawla.
Welcome to The Competitive Edge. My name is Scott Britton, and I'm here to help you answer a question that we all have. How can I get an edge in my business and life? Each week, we're going to uncover how some of the most successful and inspiring entrepreneurs, entertainers, and thought leaders get an edge, so you too can reach your full potential. Thanks for tuning in today. Now let's get started.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Competitive Edge. I'm really excited about today's guest because we've known each other for a couple years, and I just admire his work ethic. Today we have Rameet Chawla on the show, who's the founder of design and development agency Fueled. He also has a co-working space called Fueled Collective. Now, why I wanted to bring Rameet on the show is because 3 years ago when we met, it was just him and his partner in the co-working space General Assembly in New York where I was working. And today, 3 years later, they now have 85 employees that work in countries all over the world, including offices in New York and London. He has a co-working space that houses 35 startups. And he's doing a lot of really interesting things that I think we can all learn a lot from. Now, what's cool about Rameet is that there's a lot of people out there that are building apps and doing design work for companies, yet they aren't working with brands like Coca-Cola, MTV, Porsche, and they haven't been able to grow from 1 or 2 employees to 85 in such a short time span. So Rameet's going to tell us all about the things that he did to accomplish that, as well as some other really interesting things like how do co-working spaces actually work and what their real purpose is. We even talk about his unconventional way that he structures his day so that he can be most efficient and effective. And I've never met anybody else who does their days like Rameet does. So I think you'll find it pretty interesting. Alrighty, I think I've done enough talking. Let's dive into this interview with Rameet Chawla. Rameet, how are you doing, man?
Doing amazing. Scott, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. So why don't you just take a moment and tell everyone a little bit about Fueled?
Yeah, sure thing. So Fueled is it's kind of my idea on hedging the startup industry in general. It's something in technology in general is something I'm passionate about, and so I kind of was asking myself when I was in banking and I was confused and lost, what could I do to get myself into this kind of cool startup entrepreneurial industry? And back then it wasn't even that cool. It wasn't even that popular back then. We weren't using the term startups as cavalier as we're using them now. Everything was just kind of smaller businesses and entrepreneurial. And what I thought of is, it'd be great to get some experience, is if I could help other people build their products and kind of learn in that system. And so what I've been doing for the last 3 years is working with about 70% startup clients and about 30% enterprise, and just learning from our mistakes, learning from their mistakes, learning from our successes, and learning from their successes. And what I've been able to do in the last 3 years is now build a kind of system for building apps and really getting a firm understanding of what works in the industry, what doesn't work, and really what the global trends are. And with all of that access to information, we can now say, okay, cool, there's a client that's about to build something that we think is going to blow up. How do we get a stronger relationship between us and the client and potentially own a piece of that product so that we can share in the upside? And so it's kind of like a risk-averse way of entering into the startup space.
Rameet, I think you've underscored a little bit about how much you've accomplished because it's pretty amazing. I read an article that said you started out looking to help people on Craigslist, and here we are 3 years later, and you have 85 employees, people working for you in multiple countries. You've worked with some of the top Fortune 100 companies out there to build apps. It's inspiring, man. Can you take me back to the early days and talk a little bit about your journey from when you were just getting started thinking about helping people in this way to where you are today?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I think when you talk to most startup founders, and especially people that have succeeded in the industry, when they initially enter the market, it's a little bit it's a little bit ignorant, or they're a little bit ignorant as far as like what the full market is, and what really they're planning on doing. And you know, I'm no exception to that. When I started the company, one of the first things I noticed was how expensive good talent was, and you know, I was a little disappointed that that you know, being a tech guy, and if I just wanted to build like a cool site or to get something, a custom product built, all of the guys that could code well were absurdly expensive, and all the ones that would just do an okay job would be there. But that was kind of the economics of the space, and I was like, you know what? That's not fair. There should be a way for someone to just go up to a company and know they're going to get good quality code without getting ripped off. And I really felt that back in the day, the agencies that were out there were just ripping people off. And so my first goal that I set out to accomplish was kind of a fair company. You know, you could trust quality, and it wasn't like absurdly expensive. And so that's kind of what I set out to do. I mean, back then agencies, it was, you know, like it was the beginning of Web 2.0, and all the web agencies that were out there were all charging crazy prices. It was a complete boom. And, you know, some agencies would charge $500,000 or $1 million for a website. And it was like, are you kidding? You know, like the entry point should be significantly below that. And so that's what I initially set out to disrupt.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm still amazed though, because there's lots of people out there who probably had the desire to produce high quality work for their clients at a fair price. Yet you've been able to stand out from the pack. Is there anything else that you've done in your dealings over the past couple of years as you've built your company to really stand out and get some of these top companies to work with?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. I think one of the main things we did is we identified a larger movement or trend in the industry, and then just kind of attached ourselves to that trend. So I identified that one of the big kind of movements was applications that were going to be running on your phone. And when I started working on it, it was just kind of an afterthought for most people. And you had mentioned Craigslist before. I remember when I first started doing kind of research of like, hey, should I shift into this kind of mobile world? I remember doing a search on Craigslist just to see how many people were looking for mobile developers. And so, you know, I typed in mobile developer or iPhone app and kind of just all the search terms that you could possibly think of. And in the last month in New York City, there was only 2 or 3 people that had posted something where they were interested in finding someone. And that was interesting to me because I thought it was blatantly obvious that that's the way that the industry was going, yet it hadn't happened yet. So I took that as an opportunity. I said, you know what? Okay, cool. I'm going to brand myself as the mobile guy. And right now, you know, I only have 1 or 2 people working for me. And but as the industry grows, and if I tag and associate myself to that industry, then as it grows, I'll be able to ride that wave and grow along with it. And so that's really what I did. I went around, and I remember specifically like just a movement, meaning I went away from my regular routine and I said, okay, I'm just going to network and I'm going to get the word out. And before that, it was very much arbitraging, you know, people that were looking for jobs and guys that were able to build good stuff. And all of that was done in my living room, and I'd never really gotten out there. I remember after making this decision to consciously brand myself towards mobile, I was like, okay, I have to let the industry know, and I have no clout, so it's not like I can just blog about it. I have to actually get out there. And so I just started attending meetups and just going from one event to another event. And I had one app underneath my belt. It was an app that I had done for an agency in Chicago. And it was an augmented reality app. And so no one, at least in the New York scene, had really just produced one of those yet. And we were one of the first. We were mentioned in Ad Age, along with Yelp's Radar app is one of the first kind of augmented reality experiences from a marketing standpoint. And so I just went around and just showed people that. And I was like, you know, it's visual enough that they would remember that they met a guy with a beard that builds apps. And that was my whole goal. And I thought a lot of agencies that were out there, and you had mentioned, why me, and why how have I been able to do it better than others? I think a lot of agencies out there just kind of said, hey, you know what, we can help you with anything. And at the end of the day, normally they could, right? They have the staff to be able to build a digital product, and they said, we can do whatever you need. And I think that just that play is it's hard. It's hard to think of someone when you say that you can do everything. It's better to have a trigger. It's like the same thing with an app that does one thing really well. As a result, when you need that one thing, you think of it of an app. It's not like, hey, I want to do something. Now, what's that app that does everything? That doesn't really work. So I very much branded myself towards mobile, and then I was right on my prediction in terms of that industry blowing up. And since then, I've been fortunate enough to ride that wave that we're calling mobile.
That's great. I have a lot of questions. The first one, and if anybody's seen Rameet before, he has an epic beard. I mean, legendary beard. I'm jealous of it. So your beard, you did not have that beard before you went out and started basically telling people that you build apps.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a second thought, kind of subconscious personal branding thing that happened. I wasn't planning on it. The beard was something completely not related to the business, and I had a really, really kind of just a small, regular hipster beard when I hit the tech scene. But very quickly, I started to realize that people noticed it and remembered me for it. The follow-up emails would all contain something about, oh yeah, da 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 da, and then you have a great beard, or something like that. And I saw that people were identifying with it. I actually had grown the beard for as like almost a way of abstinence, because I was in love with this girl in LA. And then surely enough, like that story kind of moved on. And I had moved on from her, but I loved the beard after that. And so I kept it just for my own kind of personal branding and all of those reasons. People seem to like it. And then, I also fell in love with it. And now I like it. I love it. And it's also funny because it's grown along with the company. And someone made a pretty funny comment that they correlated the length of my beard to the success of Fueled. So now of course, we're all superstitious. So I'm just going to keep on growing longer. Yeah,
you can't cut it. And it's funny because when I was doing my research for this podcast, one of the top Google results was you on a site called Urban Beardsman, which just absolutely cracked me up. But one of the things I want to dive into a little bit deeper is just the in-between of you going to meetups, talking about how you build mobile apps, to really owning the market and working with companies like Amex, Coca-Cola, MTV. Take me through the next steps after you started going to meetups and kind of the growth stage.
Yeah, sure thing. So, one thing that you have to know is everything, a lot of it's window dressing. So like when we got our first client wasn't directly a Fortune 500 company. It was an agency that had them as, or they were their agency of record. So they had all of the digital work from like a Fortune 500, and they would need people to actually do the production. So our initial work in terms of getting our kind of brand out there and getting our name out there and getting these like larger companies was very much kind of the way the agency world works, which is, someone has like an old relationship with a very large company, but they don't have the young expertise that a new company has. So they farm out that work. And so, in our first year, we very much were doing work for companies that we couldn't even put the work in our portfolio sometimes because the agencies wouldn't let us. In some cases, the agencies wouldn't mind. And in those instances, that's when we put it up in our portfolio and we said, hey, listen, this is the actual work that we did. Although we didn't work directly for the client, it still is our work, and we were able to produce it. And so at the beginning, it very much was like, like I was saying, a little bit of window dressing of, hey, like this is this small company, we're only 8 people, but yet, we built an app for Hallmark, And that's how we initially got the credibility. In addition to that, we were one of the founding members of the General Assembly space when it opened up. And that really, I think, changed things for us because I was running my operation out of my living room before that. And co-working really wasn't a big thing back then. And, once GA opened up their space, it was very much aligned in terms of some of my design aesthetic. And to bring a client into a real office, that's and that makes a statement. And so before that, I would always be adamant about meeting the client in their office, and I'd be running from one place to another. And what was great after GA opened up, we really leveraged the space in the community and the vibe that it put off with our clients, and it was very gradual. Over time, we were kind of recognized. And really, at the end of the day, I think some people, when they were just sending out RFPs from large companies, they would just look for someone that had done well. And, we had won some awards, and, we came up on Google. It was a very organic process. I think normally when you're winning these accounts, it's, who do you know inside? And, how did you leverage that relationship? But I think for us, it was, no one had relationships with someone that was good and mobile. And so we just started building them.
Yeah, if I could really kind of codify this turning point for you, it just seems like basically you just started putting yourself in the right places. You started going to meetups. You got in a co-working space where there were lots of people who would be your ideal customer were already hanging out. It seems like that's really when everything really started to change for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about. I have this thing. It's about always saying yes in a way, especially if it's just like a personal favor for someone. So anytime someone needed something, or anytime someone wanted help about something or a question, whatever it is, it was always yes. And, now it's the same thing, but for different types of questions and requests. Sometimes people ask me to talk at events, and even though it'll be, it'll take up time for me, and I know it'll eat into my schedule, and I know that, I should be spending more time at the office, I'll still always say yes, because you just never know what's going to happen as a result of it. I mean, there were so many meetings that I took where I thought there was really nothing there, but I adhered to my system of, just going, hearing people out, listening to what they have to say. And, you never know what it's going to turn into. Same thing about going to meetups, like you get invited to meetups all the time where you see so many things happening. And if you don't have anyone going there that it's awkward sometimes. You just show up at a place with a bunch of strangers. And it takes balls just to go up to a bunch of random people and join their conversation. And I always said to myself, as long as you can just go and say yes, and even if you go alone, it's almost better than going with someone, because if you go with someone, you end up talking to them. But if you really want to meet people, go somewhere alone. You'll be forced into it. And if there's anyone else there also alone, you guys just randomly find each other. It's cool.
Yeah, and one of the amazing things about the co-working space too that I remember when I was working in GA right with you was that you have access to this large group of people with diverse skill sets. So as you go to these different meetups where you're meeting people, you have this whole network of people that you can connect those people with. And now all of a sudden you've put yourself in a really valuable position where you're in the value chain, and that you're connecting people who are trying to help each other, who are all moving in the same direction and trying to basically improve each other's lives.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that you could parlay that into one of the reasons why I opened up my own co-working space.
Let's talk about that. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about Fueled Collective?
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, so it's always actually been a dream of mine when I had started my company out of my living room to kind of own my own space and have a space where I can hang out and my clients can hang out and my friends can hang out and we all can work together. And that's one of the reasons that I was so adamant about jumping on the kind of GA bandwagon so early. I was talking to Matt back when it was called Superconductor. And I just wanted to experience his version of a co-working space so that I could learn, so that when I did it, I would have more information myself for building it out. And actually, it moved faster than I expected. So we graduated from GA and we built out our first smaller version of a co-working space right after that. and it was only 5,000 square feet. And within a couple months, actually, we acquired a space that was just adjacent to it that was also 5,000 square feet, and we decided to take it, and then we built that part out and kind of expanded, and we were 10,000 square feet. And then sure enough, 8 months after that, we got the opportunity to expand even further. And now we are at 18,000 square feet. And it's awesome. We have 35 companies in this space, 9 conference rooms, and just kind of an open floor plan, ping pong table, ice cream cart, vintage candy bar, popcorn every day at 4:00, fresh popcorn. We have a baker that comes in twice a week. Today she came in and just gave us some caramel brownies. And it's cool. It's like our little playground. And it was very much something that I wanted to kind of build to give back to the community. I had always wanted this to exist. I'd always wanted startups to be able to, recruit well from a space without the competition of, the big guys and the successful startups, because it was a handicap I had when I was recruiting. And I was like, someone could just build it, and then we could just fractionally share it, and it would be totally cool. And so, just like any entrepreneur, if, they just want it to exist, and as long as someone builds it, then, they're happy. And for me, the space that I had envisioned just didn't exist. And so I was like, that's cool. I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, I mean, sign me up. Warm cookies and popcorn. I mean, it sounds absolutely amazing. I'm curious because I think there's a lot of us out there that are listening to this, myself included, who have this dream or desire to start a space where their friends can come. You can create things that you're interested in and that you love. What would you say to people out there that the most important things to understand are if they wanted to create a similar type of co-working space?
Yeah, there's it's an interesting model. It's not necessarily a good business to go into. You have to have something that's, let's say, tangential to the actual co-working experience for you to make a business out of it. For me, for example, that tangential property is the fact that Fuel gets more exposure in the startup space, which is where our clients are. And so we make money on the services component of our business. For other people, like, for example, I was hanging out last week with the founder of Level 39 in London. And what's interesting about his space is, he has one floor of a co-working space for fintech startups in the Canary Wharf in London. And his backers are actually the owners of the Canary Wharf because they're adding heat to Canary Wharf and just adding value to all the property in their collective buildings that comprise the Canary Wharf. So their ROI on setting up a co-working space is really added value to all the property around it because they get more press, the area becomes cooler, all the other cooler companies come there, then they sign leases with some of the trending technology and fintech companies. And so they understand that additional component. For General Assembly, they understood that additional component was education. Their recent actions in terms of shutting down a larger portion of their co-working space, proves that. They decided that they didn't even actually need that anymore to fuel their education business. They were just simply going to focus on education, which I think is symbolic of that co-working in and of itself isn't really the best business. It's what else can you add with the co-working experience. One of the things that I plan on doing next is actually running kind of a full-scale, full-service restaurant inside of my next space.
What type of food is you going to serve?
So I don't think it's going to be consistent. The plan is to bring in cool chefs and rotate them. So you'll never get tired of the food that's being created. You might not like it one week, but you'll like it the next. And focus on more, farm to table and kind of healthy office eating than kind of what we have been doing here, really, which is, brownies, popcorn, and candy.
That sounds amazing. I'm definitely going to come and stop by and see you. So, I mean, I got to ask, man, you've built this amazing company where you get to create things that you love and that you're interested in. You now have a co-working space, soon a co-working space with a restaurant in it that serves delicious food. It wasn't, the picture seems pretty rosy right now, but I got to believe that there was moments in this process that were really tough, and it was hard. Can you talk a little bit about maybe one of the bigger challenging times you faced in the progression that we've went through?
Yeah, I mean, everything looks rosy now, and it is great. But I think at every point, at every stage of the company, now included, there's always kind of critical things that need to happen for us to hit our goals. And I think I always set lofty goals, and as a result of setting those lofty goals, I push myself and my team further. And yeah, I mean, like there were times when we've had core team members. I think the most devastating thing, especially for an agency, because we're based on talent, is when like a core team member leaves. And so we had our first experience of that about a year and a half ago. Someone that had led our technology team for a while left for not for another job, just wanted to relax and just kind of get out and do his own thing. And I think that was kind of a big realization, I think, for me too. For he was someone that I had worked with for such a long time, and never really imagined it ending. Always thought it was more of a partnership. We were going to kind of do this together, type of thing. And he just had a change of heart and just wanted to hang out and not manage a team anymore, and just had a different objective. And it was no big differences on opinions on direction of the company. It was just difference of opinion on what they wanted to do. And so that was a moment in time when it was definitely tough. One other instance, and it was interesting. It was a really good learning lesson for me. Was when two of our directors, which were two kind of senior people at the company, started dating. And initially, it was like they were secretly dating, and then after that, they made it more public to the company, and then they broke up. And they were two very cool people, and none of us imagined that anything negative could come out of that. But it very much kind of split the company at a moment onto two teams. And that was tough to work through, because there were two very senior people at the company. And so you can just imagine what would happen culturally if half the company teams up with one person, and the other half of the company teams up with the other. And it was probably about 6 months of kind of that back and forth where we didn't know what to do and what was going to happen. And I personally refused to pick teams, and just kind of let it naturally solve itself. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I say one person's just not going to be able to take it anymore, and eventually one of them left. And now we've recovered from that, but still it was a pretty traumatic situation to be in. And I think that you couple that with running. We've never gotten funding before, so we built this all with any profits that we were able to spin off from the company. And so at most points in our company's existence, we've only had maybe a 3-month to 6-month runway. So we're always just making it. And it's interesting because it's it's a service company, and as we grow, so before a 6-month runway was X amount of cash, and we're like, oh, okay, cool, well once we just double that cash reserve, we'll be fine, we'll have a year runway. What ends up happening is you end up growing the company, and you grow your cash reserve, but the amount of cash that you use on a monthly basis increases. And then so that 6 months, instead of being 6 months or 8 months or 12 months, it's now 5 months or 4 months. And you're growing, but yet your runway isn't necessarily growing. And so it's interesting, and it made me realize why it makes sense for companies to raise the large amounts of capital that they raise, even when they're successful. It just can be that much more of a catalyst in their growth. And I've still elected not to raise capital, mainly because service companies, the type of investors you need are different than a traditional venture capital. The types of returns that they're looking for are multiples that typically a service company doesn't produce. But it's been an interesting learning curve. I mean, we're still there. Like right now, we probably only have somewhere between 4 and 6 months of runway. And with all the stuff that we want to do, we want to build out another office, and I want to own a building in New York. It's again lofty goals, and it'll be interesting to see how they all play out.
Yeah, I mean, take me through your mindset there, because there's a lot of people that would say, great, I finally have 6 months of runway, now I'm going to get 12 months, but you've been aggressively charging by adding a ton more team members, building out co-working spaces, pretty soon ones that you're going to have world-class chefs coming in. I mean, talk to me about your thought process through that.
Yeah, I mean, so everything, a lot of people come up and be like, hey, Rameet, you've done such a good job. You're successful and all that stuff. And I take everything they say with a grain of salt. I mean, I kind of visualize this as this kind of glass house in a way, where at any point, the wrong stone can be thrown and the whole thing can shatter. Which is, this obviously like a slightly morbid way of looking at things. But I'm just being, a realist in a way. It's that, like an industry can shift really fast. People can move to just regular native mobile web experiences, or actually so non-native, but just inside web apps. And our majority of our industry, in terms of the way that we make our money, could disappear relatively quickly. And when that happens, typically it sneaks up on people. And so I'm very, very conscious of that. But in terms of the inspiration, I have a goal. I have a specific goal of a certain number of people, and that it's around 135. I have a goal in terms of what I want my working space to look like and feel like and have in it. And so for me, everything that I've done to date is just a means to an end. So I don't view it as a success in its entirety, because I haven't finished yet. So I haven't reached that end goal number. I haven't built up the space fully. Everything's been this like iterative build to get to the finish line. And I think that's why, I keep on taking the risks, and I know exactly which direction I want to go in, because I've already outlined it in my head. And, there have been obviously small pivots along the way. But it's stayed true to the initial vision. The initial vision is, you can spend 2 years of your life building one startup and risking it on external factors that you don't know if are going to work or not, or be successful. Or what's one way you can hedge on that risk? What's one way that you could theoretically build 10 different startups in a year? It's not practical for one person. They can't be spread that thin. So how can we empower a team to do that? What if I had, a labs component of 30 people just focused on 10 different startups over the course of a year? That's probable. There's no guarantees there. You have to have the right 30 people and the right shared resources. But how do you fund those 30? And so then it's like, okay, cool. What if I had an agency that had 90 people that was spitting enough cash to fund that 30 so that we could build products and own those products in the market? And that was an interesting concept. And I expanded it further. Okay, well, instead of having 30 separate people in a labs component and 90 people doing work for a company or clients, why doesn't everyone just take 25% of their time and devote it towards equity on projects that we're working with external founders? Because typically what happens is when you have companies that you're growing internally and incubating them, they don't get the attention that they deserve. You really need people that are just a whole team of people that are just full-time, dedicated, talking to press, figuring out, and just quote-unquote hustling, really. And so I tweaked it in a way where now we have a team of hustlers that are external to the company and the interests are aligned. And then internally, we're producing the work with all the knowledge that we have from all the other companies that we've worked with. So we have the knowledge and the competitive advantage to build good products. And then in exchange for just fees for building it, we're taking 25% of it as equity in that company. Now, we sit in the same seat as a VC in that regard because we get to pick which clients we want to take equity in. Because obviously, when we work with those big Fortune 500 companies, we don't get any equity in it. But that's not the goal, right? The goal is to help build one of the next big technology companies. So we use the Fortune 500 companies as like a knowledge share. We get to learn from what works for them. We get them to fund the operations really for us to take on work with no profit with a startup that hopefully will turn into something. So yeah, that's why I'm still moving forward, and I'm not looking at this quote unquote as a success yet because we're still building. It was a 6-year plan when I came up with it. We're about 3.5 years in. With my timetable, I have another 2.5 years to attack this. And I think we're maybe 3 months behind schedule, but we're pretty much there. Sometimes we're a little bit ahead, sometimes we're a little bit behind. And yeah, that's everything in a nutshell.
It's a compelling idea to think about building companies this way, because I know there's a lot of people out there who are basically just go for the home runs, and your setup almost allows you to have your cake and eat it too, but you're just going to have to wait a little bit longer to have your cake. Yeah,
it's a more systematic approach to it. It's saying, hey, instead of having one or just going after one massive success, it's very, very high in terms of risk. Let me take a more risk adverse way of approaching it. And I think that's partly because of my background in putting together risk adverse portfolios and just kind of analyzing risk whenever I make a decision. I want to take calculated risks, and I want that risk given the fact that it is a risky investment to have returns and just to maximize those potential returns. And so that's what I'm doing here. It's multiple startups. It's over the course of time that there's a probability on success, and as long as I ingrain myself in the industry and take on the right projects, there's a good chance that we'll build one of the next big ones.
It's really, really interesting stuff. I want to change gears here just for a moment and talk about 771.
Oh.
Because I think it's pretty cool, and it also is something that I've never heard anybody else do before. Can you explain the concept?
Yeah, sure. So I call it 7 in 1. It's basically the idea that there's 3 shifts in a day. 8 hours, 8 hours, and 8 hours. So 24 hours in a day. One of them is for sleeping. And so there's like kind of an active 7-hour component. So like you sleep for 7 hours. And one for that is just getting ready in the morning and getting ready for bed at night. And grooming my beard, all that fun stuff. And then the next 2 shifts, so the next 2 7 hours are what I call heads up and heads down time. So it's the first shift is a time where I get to spend it with my clients, with my employees, with potential clients, with potential employees. It's a very social time where I'm taking this interview, for example, in my heads up time. And then after that, there's a time that you need to just be creative on your own. And you need to eliminate distractions from your life, and you need to just work. And that's what I call my heads down time. And that's another 7 hours. And the one from both of those, I kind of combine into one social outing. So I'll just leave the office. Because for both of those 2 shifts, the heads up and heads down time, I'm typically in my office space. And that's like, it's off the heels of, what I had said before on just getting out there and constantly going to a meetup or just getting involved in the scene, or maybe just having dinner with friends, or if I feel like it, going to a party late night. And so for me, that kind of 2 hours, I do somewhere in my second shift. I might start my heads down time at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening. And I might leave for dinner at 9, or I might leave for an early event at 6, or I might leave for a party at 11. But typically 2 hours after I leave, I'm back in the office, and I finish up work every day at around 3:30, and I'm in bed systematically at 4 a.m. Every day, which people kind of think I'm crazy. And I look at them and I think they're crazy, because every day for me, at least culturally, in the way that I live right now, I'm not saying everyone should have the same schedule that I have, but for me culturally, like there are moments in my week or in my month where I will be out with friends till 4 a.m. And my end goal is just to always sleep at the same time. That's like one of the overarching goals, is just sleep consistently at the same time every day. Your body will get used to it. And then wake up at the same time every day. So I typically don't use an alarm. This morning when I got up, I just woke up because I had enough sleep, and I went to bed at exactly 4 o'clock. And what's amazing is, so I don't use any stimulants as a result. So I don't drink caffeine. I typically remove most of the gluten, or I have removed most of the gluten from my diet. And so I have no kind of sugars that are stimulating me into like a high during the day because I'm tired, maybe because I woke up early or I didn't get enough sleep last night, or because my sleep patterns were messed up. So everything's pretty steady. And as a result, I have my energy levels are consistent all day. So I don't have a crash in like the late afternoon when typically people have a crash, and I don't go home and just kind of hang out on the couch because I just stay even all day. And I think that's resulted in a lifestyle that is much more productive as it relates to work. Now, everyone has to ask themselves what their goals are. For me, my goal was to maximize time at the office because that's what I like to do. I physically enjoy working. And so for me, it's okay, well, how do I maximize the time at the office? And for other people, it doesn't have to be that. You can change the framework, or once you create a framework, you can mend it to what your objectives are in life. So if your goals are to spend more time with your family, like you should be able to spend more time when you're like there 100%. And so for me, it's an entire lifestyle. It's particular eating habits, and then it's particular behaviors during the day that all kind of come together with this cohesive schedule that results in me being more efficient.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because so many people are trying to sleep less. They're trying to, squeeze different things in, and then they're going out on the weekends and they're sleeping at completely different hours. It makes so much sense just from a physiological standpoint for our bodies to have that consistency. And also in terms of being able to understand what we're going to be able to get done and having some predictability to our output when you have it regimented in such a fashion like you do. I really, really like it, man.
Yeah, thanks. I just think it's interesting that culturally we've accepted the fact that it's cool to go out later on the weekends, and then, it's weird to stay out late on the weekdays. It's just like it's culturally looked at like, oh, that's weird that you were up till 3:30 on a weekday. Like, oh, you're a partier. And it's like, oh, well, no, I was at the office. And it's like, oh, your work must be crazy then. And it's like, no, I'm just being consistent. And for me, that consistent time is leaving at 3:30 and passing out at 4, sleeping for 7 hours, waking up at 11, coming into the office every day. But for other people, it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be that extreme in terms of how late it is. It's just that on the weekend, sometimes I like to go out that late. But for other people, they still go out till 4. But then come Monday, they have to try to force their bodies to go to sleep early so they can wake up on Monday morning not feeling tired. But that's never the case because they end up going to sleep still late on Sunday night. They don't get enough sleep Sunday night. They wake up, they're tired, they start drinking coffee, and like therein begins the cycle of their addiction to caffeine and other kind of stimulants in life. And I just figured out a way to get rid of that.
And you feel completely comfortable coming into work being the CEO of a company at noon?
Yeah, I mean, so it's, again, like I said, for everyone, like they shouldn't follow the exact same schedule that I have. If they have to be in at the office at a certain time, then they can adjust it accordingly. Like the theories are just sleep at the same time every day and sleep the same amount every day, and you won't even need an alarm anymore. And so for me, yeah, I mean, all my employees know that I put in crazy hours. And the hours are there for a reason. And the fact that I come in, anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours after them, because most of my team comes in at 10 anyways. Like they know I'm here 8 hours after they leave. So the fact that I come in 2 hours after is just, it's almost irrelevant.
Right. Rameet, I always like to finish with one question, and we might have just went over the answer. I'm not sure. If you had to give advice to people out there who are looking to get an edge in their business and life, you have to give them 1 or 2 tips. What would those be?
Yeah. There's one tip that I think is has definitely driven a lot of success in our business, and I see it in my friends' businesses. And it's one of the first kind of things I tell them to focus on. It's something fairly obvious, so it's not something obscure, but it's something as simple as being the top result for whatever your clients are looking for on Google has so much power. And I think that typically the value of the company that is the top result on Google is so much bigger than typically the current value of the business that someone's running. And it's the cheapest way to acquire valuable customers. And I'd say it should be the number one objective of someone that's starting a new business or running a new business right now, and as opposed to paid marketing, is to invest in the kind of sustainable or organic traffic.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the ways we talked about earlier is really just picking your niche and owning that versus trying to do everything.
100%.
Rameet, this has been so awesome, man. I mean, your story is inspiring. We've talked about how you guys have been able to grow so fast and really niche down to building a co-working space, to a different take on optimizing your output and scheduling your day. If people want to learn more about you and Fueled, where is the best place for them to go?
This is a great question. I always tell people to follow me on Facebook. I typically post a lot of the content that I publish there. I'm going to be doing a little bit more writing on Medium. And then, of course, we have Fueled's Facebook and Instagram and Twitter handle, too.
Excellent. Well, I will make sure to link all those up in the show notes. Thanks again for coming on, buddy. It's really been a pleasure.
Of course. My pleasure. Talk to you soon, Scott.
Before we finish up with today's Mindshare, I just want to say thanks for listening to another episode of The Competitive Edge. If you enjoyed the ideas in this episode and want access to all the conversations, tactics, and mind shares we'll be sharing in the future, the best thing you can do is subscribe to The Competitive Edge on iTunes. And while you're there, if you felt like this show has made a positive impact on your day, it'd be great if you could leave us a review on iTunes as well. Now, I know we covered a lot in this episode, and there might be a few key ideas or tools that you want to remember. So we went ahead and compiled all of the notes, links, and even a full searchable transcript of this conversation for you on lifelonglearner.com. That's life-longlearner.com. I also want to give you the details on a cool contest I'm running right now at lifelonglearner.com/fun. By entering the contest, you'll have a chance to win everything from Amazon gift cards to a free month of having your very own dedicated virtual assistant to an opportunity to come and hang out with me and my buds for a few days, where we'll teach you how to create your very own passive income stream. To enter this contest and learn more about everything we're giving away, head on over to lifelonglearner.com/fun. Hey everyone, Scott coming to you with another Mindshare. So I had an interesting thing happen to me the other day. Two of my roommates are coaches. They coach charisma, they coach people on how to get better with girls. Most of their clients are men who just want to be more confident, charismatic dudes that bring the type of people they want into their life. And a lot of the people that they work with are very far away from where they are today. Like, these guys have worked on this for 5 years, and some of the guys they talk to are just starting to realize, like, wow, I don't have any of this stuff taken care of, and I really want to. So, an interesting thing about that predicament is that they no longer have the vantage point of their ideal customer to understand, like, what questions they have, what they're going through, like, what are the obstacles they encounter, and
I've talked to them multiple times about, how I potentially had an interest in teaching guys this, because I've truthfully learned a ton from them. And I'm like, wow, I wish all my friends in New York knew a lot of this interesting stuff around human behavior and social skills. And I didn't necessarily think, though, that I was the right person to write a book about that, because I wasn't at the very top of my field. But what I realized is that I actually might be able to write an more effective piece of literature for a group of people, because I had the proper vantage point to address the obstacles and challenges and things they were facing that the people at the very top of their field don't have. And that to me is just really interesting, because there's a lot of people out there that want to create things and they don't think that they have enough experience or enough credibility to start creating, when in reality, the people that have all those things might be less helpful to the audience that is coming to them. So this is something that's, I think, a pretty empowering thought. It's something that makes me realize that, like, no matter where you are in your journey, there's people that you can serve, and there's things that you can create, and there's ways that you can create a business out of that. If you just know a little bit more than the person that you're trying to target. And, you actually might be in a vantage point right now where you can actually help the largest percentage of a particular audience. Just something to think about for everyone out there that has been hesitant to create something because they don't think they've done enough. You actually might be in the perfect spot to help a lot of people. So I hope you've enjoyed this Mindshare. Thanks again for listening. It means a lot to me. I really appreciate everyone out there who listens, and I look forward to talking to you soon.